Last week, I was saddened to hear the news about the death of professional wrestler Hulk Hogan. I was a fan of Hulk's, followed his career for a long time, and he was a great wrestler, a great entertainer, a great American, and it was sad to see him pass on. I liked a lot of other wrestlers as well. Hulk reminds me a little bit of my favorite wrestler, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Yes, we have a lot of wrestling fans here today, and that is a good thing. Ric Flair was phenomenal, and he was great in the ring as a wrestler. He was great on the microphone. No one could turn a phrase or coin a phrase like the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. I could almost do a whole sermon series on his quotes. We won't do that today. But I do want to share with you one of his lesser-known quotes that I think does apply to what we're going to talk about today, if you'll work with me. So if you know the design of a typical wrestling match, a pro wrestling match, the guy that you think is going to win starts off getting beat, right? Their opponent is just beating the stew out of them and getting them in leg locks and arm bars and hitting him across the face and all this kind of stuff, and the ref is ignoring all the illegal stuff, and you know the drama. And then something happens at some point in the match where things flip. And like Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, would do something, he would make a move, and you could see the momentum of that fight, that wrestling match change. And what Flair often would say to his opponent was this: "Now we go to school." Y'all didn't catch that, that's really deep. Now we go to school. He was saying, no, this first few minutes of the match, yeah, it looks like you've been beating me. I've been toying with you. Now we're going to go to school. Now I'm going to show you who I am. Now I'm going to show you and teach you, my dear opponent, some of the deeper things about wrestling, and I'm going to submit you in just a few moments. Now we go to school. Luke chapter 11 in the Bible talks about a different kind of school that we've been in. Luke 11:1. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples came to him and said, "Lord, teach us to pray as John taught his disciples." That is the theme for this entire series. No matter where you are with God, no matter where you are in your understanding of prayer, it's my prayer that your prayer would simply be, "Lord, teach me to pray. Teach me to pray." So if we're wanting to be taught, then we have to have a teacher. Therefore, we're in the school of prayer. Now, we go to school. So we're going to skip, forgive me, first grade elementary school. We're going to skip J-High, senior high. We're even going to skip over college, and we're going to go to grad school today as we look at a very difficult aspect of prayer. Many times, when we first start a relationship with God, it seems like we are a prayer maven. We are a prayer warrior. Like everything we ask God to do, bam, 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 he does. It's amazing. I can remember a friend of mine in college when he first became a Christian. I mean, I'd been a Christian many years, but I was like, man, you pray for me because you are on a roll, okay? So something happens, though, as you grow in the school of life, the school of prayer, and prayers and the answers to prayer don't come as quickly. It's been my experience and the experience of many, many others. And sometimes you're praying, and you're praying in God's will. You're praying that God would give you help in your marriage. You're praying that God would bring healing to a loved one who's sick. You're praying that God would wake up a prodigal who's drifted away from home. So you're praying asking God to come through in these situations, and you know that you're praying in God's will. You know that God hears you, but it seems like nothing is happening. It seems like the more you pray, you're shouting and praying to a deaf heaven. And you begin to wonder, what's going on? Why are my prayers not working? Why is God not intervening? Why is he not changing this person or altering this situation in the way that I know reflects his will? What is happening? It seems like, to use a very American phrase, prayer isn't working. So what do we do? How do we respond to that when we feel like our prayers are not getting through? Well, in this series, we've had a prayer card. So when you came in, you should have received a prayer card right there. And you can fill in the blanks. And we're going to go through things that we need or you will need in the future when you go through this season, when you feel like your prayers are not being heard or you think that prayer is no longer effective. It doesn't work. This is not fake. This is as real as it gets. So what do we need? If you're filling in the blank there, keeping score, what do we need? First thing we need is this, is that we need to go deeper with God. We need to go deeper with God. We're at a situation, we're in a season of prayer when it doesn't seem like God is answering the prayers the way we see fit or what we want. And we need to realize that God is taking us to a different place with him and taking us to a different place in the school of prayer. Now, I've been training in self-defense and martial arts for a long time. And the more you learn about self-defense, the more you learn about fighting, the less you want to fight. But you never conquer it. It's like some of you like to play golf. You never conquer golf. You can watch the tournament that's on today as you're napping and watching golf, trying to stay awake. And there'll be some pro who's phenomenal, and he'll shank it in the rough. He'll knock it in the pond, and you're kind of like, yeah, right? So you never conquer golf. You never conquer self-defense. And one of the things that the head coach where I train says all the time, he goes, listen, it's not about technique and self-defense and fighting. It's not about technique. It's not about knowing everything. It's about how you see the fight. How do you see the fight? How do you see this situation? So with God, when he's taking you through this time where you feel like he's not speaking, he's not guiding, he's not answering the prayer, we have to see the fight, see the situation in a different way. Prayer should not be reduced to a method of getting what we want, but prayer should be seen now as a means to deepen our relationship with God. We approach prayer now not as a consumer looking to buy a product, but as a child seeking the presence of his Heavenly Father. So we feel like prayer is not working, God's not answering my prayers. We begin to see the fight, see the struggle of prayer in a different way, and we realize, oh my goodness, prayer is not transactional, but prayer is transformational. Kierkegaard said, prayer doesn't change God, prayer changes me. Now, do we still pray for that prodigal who's drifted far away from God? Yes. Do we still pray for healing for our loved one? Yes. Do we still pray for guidance and God would intervene in this situation? Of course we do. At the same time, when the answer is not coming through in the way we anticipated, that's when we got to realize, wow, God is taking me to a deeper place. God is going to use this situation in my life as transformational, as a change agent, as a character building, as he's building the character of Christ inside of you and inside of me. What else do we need? One of my favorite singers, groups is U2, and the lead singer is Bono. Bono has a lot of good quotes. Here's one from him. He says, coolness might help in your negotiation with people through the world, maybe, but it's impossible to meet God with sunglasses on. Which is ironic for someone who has spent their entire life, Bono, with your sunglasses on. But anyway, I understand the point that he's making. We can't approach God during this season of prayer in a cool, detached manner. So if we're bumping up against the wall, if we feel like our prayers are, boom, going up, hitting the ceiling, and bouncing on top of our head, we need to realize that God's calling us to a deeper place, and we need to also get real with God. We need to get real with God. We started off the series by saying that prayer is an invitation. God's inviting us into a relationship. He's inviting us into a communication experience with Him. And in this space, God invites us into authenticity. God invites us to process the real and the raw and the rugged reality of life with Him in a very expressive and emotive way. In the Bible, the book that has the most chapters is the book of Psalms. Psalms has 150 chapters. If you want to grow deeper in prayer, if you want to learn more about prayer, go to Psalms, live in the Psalms, read the Psalms, listen to the Psalms, pray the Psalms. It will help you immeasurably. Again, 150 chapters in Psalms, most chapters in the Bible. Out of those 150 chapters, 43% are dripping with disappointment, with depression, with anger, with anxiety, with what theologians call laments. You say, well, I don't believe you. Look at Psalm 13, 1 and 2. David, one of the superheroes of the Bible. David, the farm boy who got into the ring with Goliath and became the heavyweight champion of Israel. David, who eventually became king, was also a father who had a rebellious son named Absalom who never came back home. He pours out his heart. Look at Psalm 13, 1 and 2. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle, there it is again, wrestle with my thoughts and day after day and have sorrow in my heart? Habakkuk 1:2, how long must I call for help, but you do not listen, or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? We have to pour out to God what is inside of us, not what should be inside of us. All the Psalms, the book of Psalms, the book of Lamentations, the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Job talks about how during a time when we feel like God is silent, we can enter into a raw and real place with God. And this is not comfortable for some people who grew up, like I did and many of you, in an evangelical tradition. You're not supposed to talk to God the way people talk to God in the Bible, which is kind of funny for people who say they believe in the Bible. God, where are you? God, why are you not answering my prayers? God, why do I swim in my tears every night as I'm trying to go to sleep at night? God, my bones are aching. God, my enemies surround me. God, they laugh at me, they mock me. God, where are you? This is Psalms, this is the Bible. If you're going through a time where you feel like prayer doesn't work, you're not getting through, get real with God. Pour out to God what's really inside of you, not what should be inside of you. This graduate school of prayer is about going deeper with God, growing deeper in our understanding of prayer and seeing prayer not as transactional, but as transformational. It's about getting real and authentic with God, pouring out your heart, pouring out your thoughts before him. He's going to be okay. You're not going to knock him off his throne. Now, it doesn't mean you do this every time you pray. Like if you're going out to lunch today after church and you start going, Lord, I'm mad. No, that's probably not the time to vent. But we do need to make space in our relationship with God where we lay it all out. That's what Job did. That's what David did. That's what so many of the writers of this book did in the presence of God. We need to get real. And also, we need to give grace. We need to give grace. Look at Zechariah chapter 4, verse 7. Don't even try to find it. Just Zechariah 4:7. It's a great verse tucked away in here. The Israelites had been in Babylonian captivity. They're back home in Jerusalem. They're trying to rebuild their temple. It's not finished yet. They're getting a lot of pushback. And here's what the prophet Zechariah says to the governor, Zerubbabel. He says, what are you, you great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, you will become a plain. You'll become flat. And he will bring out the top stone, that's the finishing touch, with shouts of grace, grace to it. When you feel like prayer is no longer working, when you think you're not getting through, you have to realize God's taking you to a deeper place. You've got to lay out what's really in your heart and get real with God. And then you have to give grace to yourself. You have to receive grace from God and extend grace to others. And just say to your situation, God, grace, grace to it. I need your unmerited favor and blessing in my life. God, I need your power to help me endure and to persevere in my life right now through this season. I need to speak to that mountain that seems to be overshadowing you, the mountain of anguish and disappointment and pain, and say, grace, grace to it. I need to celebrate grace. I need to receive grace. I need the grace to radically accept a situation that may not change. God, I need your grace. Grace, grace to it. That's what we need. Some of the students, high school students, texted me this week and said, Pastor, can you give us some homework to do this Sunday? I said, sure, why not? I can't believe it. People want homework in summer, but here it is. So if you have, look on the back of your card, there is a prayer. It's called a prayer of radical acceptance. You may have heard of the prayer before. It was written decades ago by an American theologian named Reinhold Niebuhr. Sounds German, but he was American. Here's his prayer. I think this prayer really encapsulates what the message God has for us today. It's a prayer that stood the test of time. It's a prayer that deals with the complexities of unanswered prayer and of surrender. I call it a prayer of radical acceptance. Take this prayer with you, read it when you're alone, carry it around with you in your purse or your jacket, put it on your refrigerator if you frequent that place a lot, as a reminder to pray. Here it is. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Many of us have heard this before. Not the second half, though. The courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I might be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever and the next. Amen. That's a good prayer. That prayer can carry you a long way in life. That prayer can help you access the grace, and power of God in your life. Keep that prayer, hide it in your heart, speak it out, read it out to God. And then the homework, as requested by our students, is God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change. What are those things in your life that you realize or God showed you you cannot change? And write it down. Grant me the courage to change the things I can. What can you change? What can you change? Write it down. God, grant me the wisdom to discern and to know the difference, and the wisdom to live this life. What's the wisdom piece? What's the story? What's the quote? What's the verse that God's given you to guide you and lead you in this moment as you wrestle in prayer? You know, church is a kind of a weird thing. Churches, like what we're doing here, worship, on many levels. I'll just deal with one. Is that when you're in church, and I know this, I haven't done a lot in life, but I've done a lot of church, okay? I was in church when my mom was pregnant. I knew Amazing Grace, the first stanza, before I came out of the womb. I've done church, okay? I kind of know it. And you're in church, and you look around, and you're like, at these people, right? And they're like, wow, they know these songs, and they know these prayers, and they even got their own Bible with their name on it. And you just think, wow, these people have it all together, and I don't, right? And listen, they may or may not have it all together. They probably don't. But know this, that everybody that you're seated around, even the person you're seeing right now in the white shirt and blue suit, everybody is going through something. Everybody is processing some anxiety and stress and pain, and maybe you're going through a time where you feel like prayer is not working. Everybody in here. So you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone in wrestling and struggling in life. You're not alone in wrestling with prayer. You're not alone. God may be calling you to something deeper. God may be calling you to a way to express that self, express it verbally, what you're really going through. I know God calling all of us to say, God, I need grace. Open your hands, your heart, your mind to God's grace. One of my favorite leaders of all time, maybe the greatest leaders ever lived on some level, would have to be Paul in the Bible. I like Paul. I like Paul's passion. I like his ability to persuade. I like his perseverance. He had been through a lot of stuff in his life. I like Paul. Paul did a lot of amazing, crazy, head-spinning miracles. Read about him in the book of Acts. Amazing stuff. Amazing. However, Paul dealt and wrestled with this question here today as much as anybody did. Again, a guy who was seeing people healed, a guy who saw people raised from the dead, a guy who had performed many mighty miracles, couldn't fix the situation that he talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter number 12. He had this thorn, we don't know what it was, this thorn that was painful. This situation, this circumstance, perhaps this illness, we don't know what it was, but Paul prayed in God's will, God, take it away, God, remove it. God said no. He prays, God, take it away, God, remove it. God says no. God, take it away, God, remove it. I'm praying in your will. God says no. No. And then God drops this into Paul's life. Paul, I'm not going to take it away, but I am going to give you enough grace to endure it. And when I give you the grace, you will experience my power in a way that you never have in your entire life. My grace is sufficient for you. So, it's like God, in the midst of Paul struggling and wrestling in this prayer situation. It's like God was leaning over the balcony of heaven and shouting at Paul, grace, grace to it. Grace, grace to it. I will hold you. I will sustain you. I will empower you in this moment, Paul. Grace, grace to it. That was God's message to Paul. And here today, in this crisp and cool August day in H-Town 2025, as we overhear this message that God had for Paul, that's God's message for you, no matter what you're going through today, is grace. Grace, grace to it. Receive His grace today. Go deeper with God today. He's calling you. He's calling you.